Hello and welcome to the JJ Studio. I'm your host, as always, Nathan, and today I'm coming at you with a reaction to the Lions' first preseason game. They played their first preseason game last night, and I am going to pick an offensive MVP, a defensive MVP, as well as talking about some guys that played well and some guys that, well, played. So, with the intro done and out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's to remind you to like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to go ahead and start this video with naming some guys that played well, but I don't think were MVPs either offensively or defensively. We're going to start with Isaiah Williams, the wide receiver from Illinois, an undrafted free agent. He played very well. I think that the fifth wide receiver spot is wide open right now, and he was someone that I did kind of think had a pretty decent chance to sneak in there as like a dark horse sort of candidate. After today, I'm not sure he should be considered a dark horse candidate anymore, especially after the way Maurice Alexander, who we'll talk about in the next section, looked returning punts. Next player that I thought actually played well was Giovanni Manu, the left tackle out of a Canadian school, I believe, our fourth round selection, or one of our fourth round selections. The other fourth round selection is actually on this list as well. But I thought he looked solid. It was against backup players, and he did have some help most of the time in his pass sets. But I thought he looked good. He looked better pass blocking than run blocking, in my opinion. However, all in all, this is someone that I do believe in the upside, and I think he showed me enough to continue to believe in the upside with him. Up next, I'm actually going to talk about these three players as a trio because, for the most part, they played as a trio. And that's Ennis Rakestra, our second-round pick, Terrion Arnold, our first-round pick, and Amik Robertson, our newly, most likely, starting slot corner after the injury to Emmanuel Mosley. These three I thought played really, really well. I do think one of Ennis Rakestra or Terrion Arnold are likely to be kicked to the bench, with Carlton Davis coming in and being the starter. However, I do believe that they will probably rotate in. It might be on a matchup basis. If they get a more physical, bigger receiver, I think perhaps Ennis Rakestra would be the player that they would want out there. If they get a more quicker or agile sort of route runner sort of player, then I think Terrion Arnold might be the one that they want to go with. It could also be a man versus zone kind of thing. Either way, I think these two are going to take turns being CB2 this year, again, barring injury. The last player that I want to talk about in the played well category was Sione Vaki, who, as a running back, looked really, really good. He, I think, and quite honestly, looked much better than Craig Reynolds. It is a small sample size, and we do know that Craig Reynolds is, a serviceable running back. If you got to put him out there, he can be okay at doing some things. And Sione Vaki, I do think, has change of pace back upside with him. He is perhaps a long-term replacement for David Montgomery. Moving on to some players that, in all honesty, just did not play particularly well. Nate Sudfeld looked awful. He looked awful last preseason. I don't understand how he has a job in the NFL anymore. He is a very bad quarterback. I get that there are things other than playing on the field and playing in the preseason that are important for the backup quarterback position, but I really just don't see how that could possibly outweigh his actual play on the field, especially considering how well Hendon Hooker looked last night. Maurice Alexander had a muffed punt, which you never want to see. I understand that it was raining. I don't care. Sometimes it's going to rain, and I just don't think that that is a great thing to see. He also had another one where he did lose the ball while getting tackled. Now, it clearly was not a fumble, but it is still somewhat concerning. The last player that I think didn't really play all that well, I don't think he explicitly played poorly, but Antoine Green didn't stand out to me all that much. I think Isaiah Williams might have surpassed Antoine Green on the depth chart after tonight. Darius Fountain was also another player that didn't do a whole lot either. And again, I do think a large part of that is Nate Sudfeld was the one throwing the ball. But even when taking that into account, they weren't particularly impressive to me. Next thing up is the offensive MVP here, and it was obviously Hendon Hooker. He looked the part of an NFL QB. He looked like the game was not too fast for him. Now, again, it was against third and fourth string of players by the time the second half started. However, that's still good to see. I would like to see him start maybe next week and maybe get some runs with some other starters, potentially at the wide receiver position. Like maybe they keep Amon-Ra St. Brown in for a drive and just let Hendon Hooker throw the ball to him. Again, maybe they don't, but maybe some starters along the offensive linemen. But I don't think that the fact that he was playing third and fourth string players is all that important, because he's probably not going to actually play the quarterback position this year. And even if he does, we saw that with players that sit and learn the mental side of the game, they do tend to struggle at first. However, once they kind of figure things out, they're very, very good. We saw that with Jordan Love this past season. I think not only is he QB2, I think he's the only other QB they keep on the active roster. It would not surprise me if they went out and tried to sign somebody to the practice squad, maybe Nate Sudfeld. I'm going to hope that that is not going to be the case, but maybe Nate Sudfeld is the guy that they're going to keep on the practice squad that they can elevate in an emergency scenario. But I do think that the backup quarterback job is Hendon Hooker's to lose. And again, coming out with him, I talked about this in the video on Monday about the quarterbacks. When he came out, like, I probably would have had a first round-ish grade on him if he hadn't been hurt. I probably would have had a top 40 grade for him. He did have a lot of mechanical issues and issues about reading the field and stuff like that. However, a lot of young quarterbacks have those issues, and the physical tools were there. So I think that he was a steal in the third round, and I believe that that remains the case, as he played very well before he did get hurt. Now, as of this exact moment in time that I'm recording this video, I've not been able to find any information on if the injury was significant or not significant, or if he's going to play next week or not. If he doesn't play next week, they got to go out and sign a quarterback. So I don't know what's going to happen. And by next week, it's actually, I believe, next Saturday, so not tomorrow when this video comes out, but next Saturday. The defensive MVP for me was Brandon Joseph. I could have gone with the defensive lineman Akuwu, who did have a sack, and in all honesty, thinking back on it, I probably should have put him in the category that played well, because he did play well, and the edge rusher position is wide open right now, so he could absolutely make the roster. Now, as I'll talk about that in the video next Wednesday, I'll talk about the defensive line, which I've already recorded upon telling you this right now, because I'm going on vacation starting on Saturday. So I have to record all the videos for the next 2 weeks in advance. But I do talk about Akuwu in that video a little bit, but had I recorded that video after this game, I might have talked about him a little bit more. All that being said, Brandon Joseph has a real shot to make this roster. There are two players that are ahead of him on the depth chart, in my opinion. However, if he can prove his value as a special teams player, as well as having the upside that he does have at the safety position itself, I think that is how he parlays himself into being on the roster, being on the initial 53, and being perhaps even a contributor. Now, the Lions do rotate their safeties a whole lot, but it's typically only 3, and we know who the top 3 safeties are going to be. But safety 4 is currently up for grabs, and typically speaking, the Lions do usually keep 4 or 5 safeties, depending upon if you want to count the nickels as part of safeties or as part of corners. After his sophomore year at Northwestern, he was a kind of hyped recruit, ended up transferring to Notre Dame after, I think he took a year off or missed a year with injury, or he took the COVID year off, something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. But he ended up transferring to Notre Dame, and that was a mistake. He was not a scheme fit for their defense, and he ended up playing himself out of being talked about in the first round all the way to being undrafted. I'm not sure if he surpassed Khalil Dorsey or CJ Moore on the depth chart yet, but if he puts another couple of performances like this together in practice and the games, he very well might be your safety 4 by the end of the preseason. But what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. And it's at this point of the video that I would like to remind you to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagree at any point, go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. And now with the outro done and out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's that I'll see you next time.